Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Future of Retail in an AI Native World. Just a couple of things before we start. You should all see a Q&A box to the right-hand side of the screen. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in there, and we will go to a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. If we don't answer any of your questions, we'll come back to you via email. So just a quick overview of the agenda. So we're just going to go through some introductions with myself and the team. We'll then go into an Ancoris overview, so an overview of the company. We'll then discuss some of the top themes impacting the retail industry at this present time. We'll then go into a case study around building the modern store with machine learning. And then we'll go to a Q&A and then finally a wrap up. So just to introduce myself, my name is Janessa. I'm the marketing manager here at Ancoris, and we'll just go around the room. I don't know if you want to start, James.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. My name is James Brooks, Sales Director here at Ancoris, leading our retail vertical.
Good morning, I'm Gethin Jones, Solutions Architect. I've worked in retail for 7 years in the sports retail industry, and yeah, looking forward to chatting to you about the upcoming future in retail within Ancoris.
Perfect, thank you both. So now we'll just go into an overview of Ancoris, so I'll pass that over to James.
Great, thank you, Janessa. And I say good morning, everybody, and apologies. I know we were meant to have this scheduled last week, but we had some technical difficulties with the webinar platform. I'll just hasten to add it wasn't hosted on Google. I won't say what platform it is on, but no, it certainly wasn't on Google. But no, again, thank everybody for your time. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes just to do a quick overview about who Ancoris are. So we are a cloud services provider focused around the Google ecosystem, headquartered in the UK. We focus on helping our customers basically overcome complex business problems with the use of technology from the Google ecosystem of products. And broadly, that is across 4 areas. So data, AI, generative AI, machine learning. So helping our customers take advantage of the data they have and then being able to gain greater insights and visualizations around that to become more competitive. Application development and user experience, so being able to build applications and transform applications from the ground up. Cloud infrastructure and security, so utilizing the Google Cloud platform for infrastructure as a service and platform as a service offerings, and then collaboration services, so workspace and the suite of products that sit under that. What we do is we're able to bring all of that together as a single service offering and deliver those business outcomes to our customers in a secure and consumable way. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is our ability to move quickly. So we have our tagline of think big, start now. So, you know, understand what the challenge is, but then actually how do we start something and show value quickly during that phase. So that's just literally a couple of minutes about who we are, if you haven't already heard of us. And as I say, if any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we can cover off accordingly. So in terms of within the retail industry and some themes that we are seeing. So, you know, we have quite a strong heritage in the retail space. We have a number of existing customers across various areas in the retail space, and have, you know, certainly in my role, I have you know, almost daily conversations with both existing and prospective customers about the challenges that they are facing in what is an ever-changing world that we live in at the moment. And we've just highlighted here what we see as sort of 6 key areas or themes that we see prevalent from certainly our customer discussions that we've been having. And we're just going to spend a bit of time just talking through each one. And again, if any questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the chat. The first one we're going to talk through here is sustainability. And that is obviously a very broad topic. So, you know, this is everything from how you have sustainability within your supply chain, through to how your stores operate, through to, you know, where your infrastructure resides in terms of technology and IT, etc. And I guess a couple of key themes that we're seeing from our customers, I guess there's 3 really, which I've seen sort of top of mind of late. The first one is around sustainable sourcing. So making sure that you are products and materials from sort of eco-friendly and sustainable provisions. So everything from materials through to the supply chain that you're utilizing to deliver those into store or into your warehouse. The sourcing piece is becoming much more top of mind, and certainly from a consumer perspective, consumer decisions are being based a lot more now around where the sourcing has come from for those products. Around that. The second one is around energy efficiency. And again, this is quite a broad topic, but a couple of areas that we've been working with customers in this space is around the technology infrastructure that's underpinning their operations. So cloud by its nature drives towards a more sustainable footprint, and Google is working towards being carbon neutral, and is already carbon neutral in terms of offsets at the moment. So enables customers to drive that piece from an energy efficiency perspective, but also ties into things like routing and delivery networks. So making sure that you are driving the greatest efficiencies, whether it's utilizing electric vehicles or your route optimization planning around that, to ensure that you're driving efficiencies as much as possible. And that not only works towards cost savings in that regard, but then also towards reducing your overall carbon footprint perspective as well. And then the final one seen is around waste reduction in the sustainability space. So see, very recently there's been the ban on plastic reuse cutlery that's come into force within the UK. So how you reduce waste throughout that supply chain and throughout your operation again is top of mind. And just making sure that you are driving efficiencies as much as you can across that. So again, quite a broad topic. It's probably one of the hottest ones that we talk to on a daily basis with our customers in that space. So I'll just pass over to Gethin just to cover off around brand authenticity.
Yeah, thanks, James. So brand authenticity is a really interesting topic. It has this real sway and balance. There is obviously, at the start, as your brand's coming, you might be startup culture, you might be someone who's established within the business or within the retail sector. But your brand needs to change and adapt over time. James has touched on it there about the sustainability angle. All brands are now pivoting to this, and we're seeing leaders in the market, Patagonia being a really fine example of this, really taking the lead, sharing sort of textiles, materials, best practices, making that open to a lot of the retail network. So it's not a case of just being able to hold on to those things and keep it for your own business benefit, but actually the wider picture and the longer term view. And that's, I think, resonating with a lot of customers at the moment. But I suppose, and it will come in, I might tie into this in the later section, but it comes to about understanding why your customers engaging with you in the first place. Is it the product offerings? Is it the feedback? And that's effectively, it's a sentiment analysis problem where we're looking at that. So understanding, actually, are we engaging with the customers in the first place, getting that information back? What's drawing? What's the USPs for your business? And actually driving and staying true to those KPIs. Obviously, things might have to adapt and change and pivot. But actually, what you'll see is that as long as you're keeping them resonating with that customer and communicating effectively, your brand will always align to what the changes of the sort of wider market will do. So I think it's a really important aspect. But I think it comes down to key communication and actually having the data and insight. And luckily, we're in a position now where it's not just your bricks and mortars. You've got people coming to the store. You know who you're talking to. There's such rich information in there through social selling, through your CRM systems that you're utilizing, even stuff like Google Analytics and the marketing platforms that are out there today, being able to bring that through. You can gain so much insight on your customer in a GDPR compliant and sustainable way that you're going to ensure that you're maximizing your brand authenticity and pivoting to suit your customer, because that might change over time. But as long as you have that awareness, you're always going to stay true to that. I'm then going to sort of pass. Well, actually, I think supply chain is mine, isn't it, James? Just make sure I've got that right. Fantastic, cool. So actually, this is one that is a personal favorite of mine. Supply chain resilience. I worked in buying for 4 years. Worked in sort of triathlon wear and soft goods was sort of the key area for me. But the interesting stuff, and I think COVID really kind of brought to light actually how stressed the supply chain network can be. One thing, and everyone I'm sure has seen it on the news when it came through, but that Suez Canal, I think we had probably 30 or 40% of our goods stuck within that shipment, or within shipments that are following on behind that. And I think that really resonated with a lot of customers, and that the fact that is there ways to adapt and change. And there's also, we're hearing about chip shortages. Actually, even from a textiles manufacturing thing, due to COVID, people had to, you were spread working, so almost half your workforce, and therefore half the production value of what you can actually bring to market. And in that, it just shows that there's key things to pivot. And if you had that knowledge and insight, which is available to you, like I know from personal experience, I had emails about every shipment and stuff, and what all it was doing is it was sat in an archive folder, never to be used. But the information is there. It's just a case of wrangling and bringing that stuff to life. And we've seen, I think Renault Group was a really great example. They had a supply chain twin effectively. So they created a digital twin of their supply network, and they were able to foresee not just overall large products like jackets, coats, whatever it might be, but right down to the fine, like the zips or the, if in using sort of a clothing example, but for them it was chip shortages, and being able to manage that and have that insight that you can either pivot or you can look at other vendors to kind of maximize your opportunity. Or even if you know that shortage is going to come through, holding on to stock, and you can kind of marry this wonderful optimization problem between your supply chain and your inventory, and ensuring that you've actually got the capacity to hold that stock and start agreeing stronger and longer terms on your payments with your suppliers to ensure that you can manage that, because that's going to put you in a competitive advantage. And we've seen that time and time again, where key retailers might have not have stocked a certain product, and all of a sudden you see this wonderful spike in sales and go, oh, that's just come overnight, why is that? But it turns out it's just by managing your supply chain, your inventory, you can really maximize your advantage against your competitors. And then, so omni-channel experience, and this is something, it's a really interesting topic, and I think we've seen it now, but I think there is now a lot more comfort in online retail. It's definitely something that's now really changed sort of post-pandemic. People are more comfortable spending on high ticket items, are happy to spend the value and know that they'll get great benefits on shipping and great benefits on returns policies like 365 and all that sort of thing, or even sort of membership discounts and stuff to help sort of benefit and drive that value for the consumer. But within that, there still doesn't mean that the bricks and mortar is kind of gone. There is a real opportunity now, and we're seeing people now more coming back to work, things are moving through, but trying to intertwine these opportunities together, I think that's a really interesting topic, and it's something that we've spoken to a lot of customers about, how we manage and showcase that. Simple things as being able to go, well, here's your browsing history, and you just happen to come across a store within the local area on your commute to work. Why not go try that on? Why not prompt? Why not using the applications, and you start really honing in on this wonderful omni-channel experience where the consumer is kind of getting engaged through all points, and you're by just stimulating and creating that what's the word for it? I've forgotten the word of it, apologies. But by just creating that level of engagement, we can actually improve the shopping experience. And actually, again, that kind of ties back into the brand authenticity and brand loyalty, because people realize that they're being looked after and catered for, not in the case that you're being followed around like a lot of people are concerned about these days, but actually just providing that additional benefit and service. And I think that's something that we will be seeing more and more of, people bringing the online back into store and kind of helping to have this complete, especially with things on the sustainability side of it, where a lot of businesses are conscious on actually the cost of returns, and actually not just the cost of value for their business, but actually the carbon footprint that generates. If you're able to kind of encourage people to come into store, try on product, you're doing it in a far more sustainable way than you would have done previously. I'm just going to pass back over to James on workforce enablement.
No, thank you, Gethin. And I think just one final point, I guess, on the omnichannel piece. I think certainly one of the leaders that we've seen in that and making that experience, just really good from a customer perspective is John Lewis, right? The ability to purchase something online, but then you can go into a John Lewis store or a Waitrose store, pick up that product. If you've bought something online, you can return that product into store. It's all seamless, and then you can see everything through your loyalty card that you have in there, and actually ties in nicely to a case study we'll cover on later on. But actually, loyalty is a key part, and having that data centralized is a key part to help enhance the omni-channel offering that you can offer to your customers. So yeah, I mean, workforce enablement, again, big area where Google have driven a lot of I guess innovation in the space. I guess there's three key areas that we're seeing as, again, top of mind in this space. First one is around employee onboarding. So the nature of the retail industry is very seasonal in a lot of cases. So, you will at peak time, so coming up to Christmas, for example, retailers will onboard seasonal workers for a period of time. That needs to be done quickly and efficiently. And they need to be able to get up to speed very quickly in terms of understanding, right, what is the offering, the customer service aspects that tie into that. The onboarding, for example, with people within restaurant chains, for example, right? There's elements there that are different to perhaps onboarding within a traditional sort of closed retailer. So being able to get that employee orientation done efficiently and quickly is key to that. And we're seeing more and more retailers looking at technology to help them enable that. So being able to have a lot of that onboarding content delivered remotely, right, via any device. So that whole sort of CX customer experience piece is key to how you deliver that training, that onboarding, that enablement. And ties into the next piece is around digital tooling and technology within the store, but also for those remote workers. So, you go into a lot of the modern stores, Apple stores is a great example of this. In terms of how you actually purchase the product, it's all done from handheld personal devices in that space. So again, giving a lot more flexibility to both the retailer in terms of enabling the employee, but also improving that customer experience. And the key to that is making sure that technology is user friendly, right? So it has to be easy to understand, easy to utilize, doesn't break, and is almost almost like a home from home. So majority of people are used to using some form of smart device, and that's why you're seeing a lot more smart device type technology acting as point of sale within retailers, etc. And then the applications that the employees are interacting with, right? So making sure that they are, again, easy to consume, can be on bring your own device or within store devices. Making sure that they're secure and being able to be delivered as needed. And then the final one around that enablement piece is bringing information to the fingertips of those store workers. So, when you go into a physical store, being able to empower the employees within that store to have knowledge and data points around the customer, so that you can personalize that experience in much more detail. So again, tying back into the loyalty piece, if you're able to have an understanding of, okay, this was the last purchase this individual made, therefore the next type of purchase we think is going to be this, empowering your employees within that store to be able to practically have that information when talking to customers, again, just greatly enhances that personalization and overall customer experience within that regard. So I say a lot of key areas there we're working with customers on. Just a few examples there, and then finally moves on to customer centricity. So I'll pass back to Gethin on that one. So.
Thanks, James. And just before jumping into that, I think what we're seeing actually from a workforce enablement, there's been loads of conversations we've been having customers already about how, literally, as James has said, how to get that information to hand, and we realise a lot of this information is locked within documents, policies, user manuals, wherever it might be, wherever those training books are set. But actually, some people just need to be, especially with seasonal workers, it's people need to hit the ground running, and being able to have conversational agents. I think we're seeing something where a lot of these now large language models are really starting to come into play as helping to actually streamline a lot of these workforce enablement problems, and giving people something at their tips that they can actually go, and they know that they'll get consistent information from every time. And if not, then they can kind of push things to maybe a higher or a supervisor or a leader manager, but actually streamlines the whole process and allows people to work more effectively and actually a little bit more silo, which I think in now that we've got so many more remote workers now as a proposition in the UK, is a huge benefit. So I think there's definitely something that's really of value then, and that's an area of retail I think that's going to change a lot as time goes on. But anyway, back to customer centricity. So we've done, this is something that we've done a lot. I've done previously within my role within Sigma Sports as a sort of within the marketing area, but also actually we've helped a lot of our customers. And the issue it kind of stands is trying to follow where your customers are sat around a given business. Like Sigma Sports, Instagram was massive for us. It was an area where it was great content, people, the term is like bikes on a wall, BOW. But people absolutely really enjoy the theme, seeing new models, seeing new prisms, seeing how people design and maybe change specs over, really kind of help, again, kind of bring us that brand authenticity. It kind of gave us the kudos that, okay, these guys know what cool road bikes are, know what's up and coming in the industry. But it differs. We have other brands that are started off that actually, interestingly, like Reddit was a really, really high application. People kind of delving into sort of, oh, what products, or why would you do this, or like the sort of weight weenies within the area. There are customers suited to every demographic of a very broad product range that we offered at the time. But it's being able to follow and understand and interpret those customers at the right place at the right time, I think, is really key. And it kind of falls down from a data problem. It sits within customer sentiment analysis, and effectively is taking all this social media content, which actually historically was a very, very hard piece of modeling to do. You'd have to be trying to look for certain words, certain contexts, certain positive. You could do some extent of it, but actually it's way more evolved than it has been in the last 2 years. Again, thanks to large language models that have now come into the fold, which Google have foundation models for within the business to kind of help consolidate all that information and summarize, actually, are these customers engaging with you? Are they not? Do we need something else? What products are engaging in what areas? And by, once you start funneling and getting these pieces together, you're going to start the process of what we call a single customer view, where you understand where people are engaged from, where they come from, where they're still engaging from, what areas they're looking towards. And you can get to some really, really interesting stuff. Once you've got a handle on that information, the opportunity to personalize, interact, and engage in such a broad or different sort of ways, actually in a far more automated fashion than that would have been done 2 years ago. That's a really exciting opportunity. And I think, again, it's going to help enhance your revenue figures, your brand authenticity, because you're talking to the right people in the right way. The example we've always used is runners and cyclists, triathletes. They all want to be talked to in different ways. And you need to make sure you're engaging the right thing. If you start sending content that's irrelevant, if I start sending someone who's an avid cycling customer running shoe adverts, he's going to get annoyed with me and he's going to unsubscribe. And that's what we need to mitigate in the example. But there's huge opportunity in creating that personalized campaigning and increasing that brand loyalty. So I think that is a really interesting aspect that we will see people developing and bringing forward. And we're all seeing, and James will kind of jump into a case study shortly, of where we're already using that and bringing benefit for their customers.
Great. Thank you, Gethin. And I think, there is a common theme across, I think, all of the things that we've run through there, and that is around data and the power of data and the need to have it centralized and being able to, for you as a retailer, to be able to consume and act upon it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And where we're seeing, the retailers who have got a good handle on that are the ones who are leading the way in terms of personalization, the ones in terms of being able to adapt more quickly to perhaps macroeconomic shocks in the industry, are those that have all their data centralized, have clear policies and approaches to how they both consolidate and act upon that. And brings us nicely on. So just going to share here a case study with a customer that we worked with in collaboration with Google. So this particular customer, they're a leading multi-channel specialist retailer in the arts and crafts and toys, books, stationery space, quite a mouthful to say, and focus on sort of providing value-based products, again, across, I say, over 500 stores, bricks and mortar within the UK, and also a strong online presence. And they were in a situation where they weren't able to get a single view of who their customer was, in terms of, the customer that came into store versus the customer that was online, versus the customer that perhaps just browsed but didn't purchase anything. And they saw this as a gap in terms of being able to both drive customer loyalty, but also to better target the different customer groups with offers and services, etc. So they took to, first of all, consolidate the data points that they had into a single platform. So they chose Google Cloud and BigQuery. ultimately as that platform to consolidate, so that all of the relevant data was in a single location, so that it could be utilized and acted upon. This tied into a loyalty program that they were also kicking off, and in order for that loyalty program to be successful, they needed to be able to act upon the data insights that they would derive from the information they had. So as Ancoris, we helped with Google to build out that initial data platform for them, and build all the relevant data feeds to consolidate all of that data into the BigQuery platform for them. The results of that is now that they have the ability to make data-driven decisions, which they didn't have before. So they can understand better customer lifetime value. They can better match in their loyalty program to customers and better personalized offers. This has also helped to empower their staff. So we touched on one of the challenges earlier, is being able to enable frontline workers with information about their prospective customers. Again, they're able to do this through this platform that we put in place. And it's helped also improve offline operations for them as well. So being able to look at perhaps predicting upcoming trends, etc., and then get much closer to the marketing campaigns which are successful for them in that space. This was the first phase, as I say, and it was in tandem to their loyalty program. And what it's now provided this particular customer with is the foundation to then go and expand. As I mentioned, the first phase is to get that data in and start acting upon it. But now we're looking at with them around things like generative AI, for example. So what are some of the more things that we can be doing now that we have all this data centralized? How can we perhaps automate some of the processes that we have in place? How do we further drive customer intimacy? How do we further run sort of predictive models around event planning, scenario analysis, just to help with overall efficiency in that space? So again, just one example of a particular customer that we worked in with and been working both the sort of last 18 months or so in that space. So I'll just pause there. We've got some time now for some Q&A, which we can run through. And as I say, if anybody has any questions that hasn't already put them in, please do put them into the live chat, and we'll do our best to answer them here. If not, then we'll take them away and we can follow up with an email response accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you both. That was really interesting, and it was also interesting to see a real life use case as well. So just one of the first questions, how will generative AI help retailers create a sustainable future? That's to both of you. Yeah.
Do you want me to jump in for that one, James?
Yeah, if you want to kick off, Gethin. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a sustainability perspective, it's quite interesting. The opportunity is being able to help sort of making sort of those standard recommendations, I suppose. Understanding where sort of, the issue I think a lot of people have, and this is just me talking from sort of my background within data and retail, is there's a lot of information out there, but democratizing that and actually making sense of something that's actionable is something that's a real struggle. So if we're talking about the sustainability question, if we're able to kind of understand and generate sort of hypothesis for where people are traveling or where goods are being shipped in, being able to summarize and go, well, this has come from here, it's taken by air freight, it's cost this much, and your carbon footprint is X. Normally what would happen in the traditional sense of it is that someone would go through, do some analysis, would be in there, chucking through reports, building stuff together, and then you'd have a whole bunch of numbers, which arguably in the end point, the people who are the stakeholders and the change drivers aren't going to be able to interpret and understand in any way, shape or form anyway. But the opportunity is actually being able to take that structured data, summarizing that in a cohesive manner that actually people can drive action and recommendations from. And that's what I think is quite powerful. So being able to, as long as the information is sort of sat within your business, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to democratize that and sort of build in this output and understanding of going, right, well, these are the recommendations that we can help. And also, in addition, just as a side note, it doesn't even necessarily have to be generative. For example, Google Cloud is sat as a sort of carbon neutral cloud, which I don't think a lot of people, when they look at their sustainability policies that they go forward to help show that they're committing to sustainable practices in their business, everyone looks at less cardboard, less wastage, less cardboard boxes, EVs and track, but actually you could save quite a considerable amount in your sustainability angle just from migrating to cloud CO2 neutral environments, and that's actually a really impressive thing. And there is assessments out there to help companies kind of build and bring that through. I don't know, James, if you had anything to add to that.
No, I think you covered it very succinctly there, Gethin. I think the key to all of these, and generative AI is a big topic, right? It's the latest buzzword, and one of the common things we're working with customers across all verticals, and retail is prevalent in this space as well, is really just help to navigate through the noise and really distill it down to, right, what is a specific use case? What's a specific challenge within your business where we think generative AI can add value, right? The key is with these, we do it where it makes sense to do so and it's driving value, not just for the sake of doing it. And actually, a number of the engagements we've had, through our Gen AI rapid prototyping approach, where we effectively we build out a use case and deliver that back within a matter of a couple of weeks, is actually some of those business challenges can be overcome with, like I said, more traditional type AI services, right? So more traditional machine learning or predictive AI in that space. So, and again, it ties back to the sustainability piece, right? It's making sure you're doing the right thing at the right time that's going to drive value, right? And that value is, right, bottom line, top line revenue, but also, working towards your sustainability goals in that space. So I think actually the biggest thing that retailers and all customers should be doing is really just making sure that whether they're doing it internally or working with partners, is to distill down what is the business value that I'm trying to drive from this? How do I get that into a prototype, a quick proof of value as a test point, and then you look to move and productionize it. We've seen a couple of examples of organisations that have gone sort of full hog straight into it, and they're sort of perhaps regretting some of the steps that they made because they perhaps went too fast into it without really trying to understand what it is the business challenge that they're trying to overcome.
Perfect, thank you both. So just another question, how will generative AI help retailers build brand loyalty?
Yeah, no, I won't go back over the whole wider generative AI piece. I just covered off in there, but obviously similar approach. So a couple of use cases that we've seen in terms of that brand loyalty and authenticity piece. The thing to be careful of, we've seen retailers looking at Gen AI to help, for example, create product descriptions on their website, or to generate content, whether it be visual or whether it be just text content around that. I think the key thing is to make sure if you're putting that particular use case into play, is making sure that the models that you build are trained in such a way that they adhere to your brand authenticity almost, and we touched on it earlier, right? So the key is when you got to make sure those models are trained in such a way that they will, when they're writing those descriptions or whatever, they're doing it against the authenticity of what you see and promote yourself as the brand, and that will again help towards improving brand loyalty. I think the other side of it is then using generative AI in some of the back-end processes potentially. So how you drive efficiency. So whether it's utilising it to improve coding, for example, so that you can speed up the rate of release of perhaps your latest e-commerce application, right? So, or ensuring the efficiencies of your website and operations. That has a link to then the brand loyalty, because we've all been there. If we've gone onto our favourite website to buy something and the website's performing poor, you may go off and go somewhere else to purchase something. So that's in terms of that back end process, helping to improve efficiencies, will also work towards brand loyalty in that space as well. I don't know, Gethin, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it kind of sits down as a bit of a marketing piece in that function, which is quite interesting. And I think there is opportunity there to showcase I come back to personalization. I know we touched on it a couple of slides earlier, but being able to bring timely content. And I think traditional, if you looked at, it's when you're campaigning for so many different cohorts of audiences, trying to create something with a personal touch I've seen some companies do some really great work from like a person who's purchased from day one gets this automated message, and those things are great, but it's not personal to the touch and it's not timely. So for example, if things kind of come into the media, or the effective example is being looking at stuff that's in short supply, for example, and driving revenue off the back of that. If you had that awareness and you had that data coming in to tell you, you could generate personalized emails to a recommendation matrix of 20, 30, 40 prospective customers, with each having individual personalized emails. And that's something that can be done, what traditionally might have been hours or days, can be done in a matter of minutes. And as James sort of touched on this back-end processing, you can utilize data models and stuff to now go, if these products are coming in short supply, generate emails to X, Y, and Z, and you can have large language models generate that content really succinctly. We've seen we've demoed some examples to customers already where we're showcasing how that can be done, and it's a really impressive aspect. And I think what it will now do, and I think it's the traditional way, is normally 80% of the effort is doing the work, 20% review, and then showcasing off. But actually, what's happening now is that 80% is now being arguably spent more than review time, but your overall time is shorter. So you're able to let the powers of generative AI and sort of traditional data models help influence and create those decisions and those workflows. And all that you'll have to do is just spot check and go, actually, yeah, I like that. No, actually, that the wording doesn't seem quite right. And these things will enhance and grow as time goes on. And I think those are the real benefits. And actually, if you can start personalizing content and people feel like that you're really speaking to them as an individual, that's your simplest route to guaranteeing brand loyalty, in my opinion. I think that's the way. I think that's the way that companies will actually start being able to action these. And we've seen it already. There's loads of people creating dynamic brand content, dynamic ad content based on personalized features used in these large language models. So I think it's here to stay, and there's only going to improve and drive that personalization journey to another level.
Great.
Perfect, thank you. And then just kind of on the flip of that, I suppose, is there any risks you see using generative AI in retail?
I'm happy to start on this one. So yes, I think like any, and again, I touched on it, the risk with generative AI is that you don't utilize it in the right way, right? And that you don't understand the business change, the business value that you're trying to achieve as a result of implementing it. So I think the biggest risk that we've seen is customers perhaps jumping in 2 feet too early without really trying to distill down to what they're trying to achieve. And certainly the way that we're working with customers to help alleviate that is we will run an ideation session up front, and then we can actually develop a prototype, and then we've then got a back catalogue almost, if you like, of prototype models that we have built for different use cases that we can then bring and show customers as an example and say, well, actually, if this is the typical challenge you're trying to overcome, here is how a generative AI use case or generative AI model could help you in that regard. I think with it specifically within retail, I think it's, one of the risks could be around if you let the model shift. So this idea of once you've built the model, this idea of model shift, and you could risk losing your brand authenticity, for example, if you're using it to generate content, whether that's visual content, whether that's written content. So once you've got a model set up, being able to manage and monitor and maintain that is critical, because if you don't, then you are at risk of actually that sort of model shift, and you risk then losing your brand or identity, authenticity as a result of that. And I think the other thing, just to finally add in there, is what we see with generative AI, and I know there's some press out there that says Gen AI is going to take over the world and everyone's going to lose their jobs. It's very much, it's around an enabler, right? So it's using it as a technology enabler to enable you to become more efficient in what you do. So the other advice we always say is you need to have human oversight. You need to have human touch points with anything that you're doing in generative AI, just to make sure that it is continuing to do what you need it to do. And you either do that through your own resources, or you can utilize an organization like Ancoris who can manage that on your behalf in that regard. Neville, Gethin, is there anything you want to see quickly add on to that?
Sorry, I'll take that as a name. It's no issue for me. No, I literally, I think actually the real key thing that you touched on there is that model drift and skew. I think that's really important. And actually, we've seen that, there are going to be things, war, natural disasters, COVID is a perfect example. Models will only work until a point until something drastically shifts in the normal nature of things. And it's super important. We've done a lot of ML optimization on my pipelines to make sure that we're managing, we're checking and monitoring those things. And it's a really key aspect to be aware of. And a lot of people just overstate, yeah, we've got a model, it's working, we're going to carry on and use it. But by not capturing that, like you're saying, you're kind of diverting your path from actually staying in tune with the customer. I think it was a really, really valid point to raise, and it's something that people need to be aware of, and that human in the loop aspect is also extremely key. I think people just do think that there is ultimately a responsibility with AI, and actually another aspect is bias. And I think a lot of people will try and ramp up a model to assume, great, this works for our audience. But what if your audience is 60% male, 40% female? You've already just inherited bias just because that's your business process. And actually, there's this aspect called like equality of opportunity, effectively making sure that it doesn't matter what SKU, where people live, or what these factors that people can generate inherent bias. And there's been some great podcasts from Hannah Fry, who's a mathematician from UCL. She works for the police and was trying to understand where crime is generated. And unfortunately, there's a correlation between poverty and criminal activity, which is expected. And these areas of poverty tend to have certain demographics. And these biases can actually be massively detrimental to your brand authenticity, because if you start marketing with those biases in mind, we've seen it. There's been loads of social media posts to showcase that, where actually these things are inherent, and people turn off and switch off. And actually, it could be catastrophic in some cases for brands if they don't adopt responsible AI and sort of bias principles into their logic when they're building these models through. And that's something that we've supported. We actually just have, I think, it's a month old now, but we have our responsible AI policies, that how we work and how we ensure that we get the best for our customers and how we operate within the business. So, I think that's always a really important aspect to add.
That's good.
I think that's all the time we have for questions. So James, I think you just want to do a quick roundup.
Yeah, no, I think, well, listen, though, thank you for everybody who's joined, and thank you for the questions. As I say, we'll send a link to the webinar as follow-up, and obviously with our contact details. So if there is anything you want to discuss further with myself, Gethin, or the wider team here at Ancoris, obviously be more than happy to pick up those conversations. And I wish you all a pleasant rest of Thursday, rest of the week, and hopefully I'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you.